Hey, what's up? It's Werewolf, and today we're going to be going over Verity, the fourth encounter of Salvation's Edge. I want to start by saying that this is a super complicated encounter. This is the first guide you're watching. Welcome. If you ended up here because you've watched other guides and still don't understand the encounter, hopefully this clears things up. The whole reason I'm making this guide in the first place is because I think other guides make it a little bit more complicated than it actually is. I felt super confused after watching countless guides for several reasons. Either the guide was too wordy and technical, or the language that they used just didn't click in my brain. Hopefully the changes that I've made in my explanation works in your brain. If not, no hard feelings. This is a beast of an encounter. Before you start, it is important that everyone in your fire team has a distinct helmet and a distinct ghost. If you can connect the two, even better. I'll explain this mechanic in more detail later, but several times throughout the encounter, players are going to get killed by the witness, and the surviving players will need to carry their ghost to a statue of its guardian. The easier it is to identify both ghost and guardian, the smoother this process is going to go for you. For example, in our run, I decided to use the blueberry mask from the Festival of the Lost. My ghost, which everyone on my fire team thought looked like a backpack, went well with the blueberry, since you typically put blueberries in your backpack during nightfalls, public events, strikes, etc. Once you've gone around and looked at everyone's guardian and their ghost and have some familiarity with the pairs, you can continue on to starting the actual encounter. Before I start laying out specific roles, objectives, mechanics, etc., I want to cover the overall goal of the encounter. I think it's important to know what the purpose of the whole encounter is so that your actions can better align with the objective of the group. At the start, the witness is going to choose 3 guardians and individually transport them to their own dimension. These 3 guardians that get transported I'll refer to as inside guardians throughout this guide. The 3 guardians that are left in the original room will be referred to as the outside guardians. Each inside guardian gets their own unique shape that they have to pick up. After going through a couple of mechanics, the guardians on the outside need to make the shape that matches the inside guardian shape. These shapes that they have in common between the inside guardians and the outside room serve as the link between dimensions and allows the inside guardians to reunite with the outside guardians. You'll need to perform this reunification of the team 3 separate times in order to beat the encounter. I also want to go over the shapes. There are 2-dimensional shapes and there are 3-dimensional shapes. The 2-dimensional shapes are circle, square, and triangle, and are the shapes that the inside guardians are going to be the most focused on. The 3-dimensional shapes are going to be various combinations of those 2-dimensional shapes and are the primary focus of the outside guardians. I'll put a diagram on the screen that shows all of the combinations, but don't panic. This is where I think other guides get too technical. When I first watched other guides, I felt like I had to memorize all these combinations, and in reality, you don't. Take a deep breath. I got you covered. With the basic overview out of the way, let's move on to the specifics. I'm going to start with the inside guardians. I think this is a far simpler process and requires less problem solving and mental gymnastics than the outside guardians role. However, the witness chooses randomly who goes inside and who stays outside, so it is important to be familiar with both roles. You will know that you've been chosen as an inside guardian if you are suddenly alone and see a wall of crystal blocking you from returning to the entrance of the room. You will also see 3 statues of guardians holding a 2-dimensional shape. The very first thing you want to do is call out the order of the 3 shapes being held by the statues, from left to right. In this run here, you can see that triangle is first on the left. I know it is to my right at the moment. I'm facing backwards. The statues are ordered from left to right as you approach them from the entrance. So triangle's on the left, square is in the middle, and circle is on the right. So the call out will be triangle, square, circle from left to right. This call out is for the outside guardians so that they can start working on their mechanic, which I'll be explaining later. You ideally also want to type those shapes into the text chat so that the outside guardians can always refer to that call out in case they forget. You'll see me do this from the outside person's POV later on. Once you call out the order of the shapes, you'll want to find your guardian statue and make a mental note of what shape your statue is holding. The ultimate goal is to pick up the 2 shapes that are not your statue shape. In this example, you can see that my statue is on the right, holding a circle. That means I eventually want to pick up a triangle and a square, since those are both not my shape. Once you've identified the shape that your statue is holding, you will want to look at the wall on the back of the room that has rotating shapes. It should be rotating between 2 shapes. Sometimes they're different shapes, sometimes they are the same shape. One of the 2 will always be the shape that you're holding. The shapes that appear on the wall represent the shapes available to be picked up in your room. In this example here, the shapes available to be picked up in my room are square and circle. Again, the ultimate goal is to pick up the two shapes that are not your statue's shape. So we have a problem. My statue is holding a circle, and I have a circle in my room. That's not good. I don't want a circle, I want a triangle and a square. So how do I get rid of the shape that I don't want, the circle, and gain the shape that I do want, the triangle? We'll do this by working with the other inside guardians. Shapes can be passed to other inside guardians by depositing them at their statues. We're going to streamline this process by breaking it down into two phases. The first phase seems counterintuitive, but this method requires less communication while guaranteeing that everyone gets the shapes that they need by the end of the encounter. Phase 1 requires each guardian getting 2 copies of the shape that their statue is holding. This is the shape that they ultimately don't want. In this example, my statue is holding a circle. So for phase 1, I want 2 circles on my wall. I want all of it to match. The other guardians in their inside rooms also want matching shapes. Since I have a square in my room, I'm going to give it to the statue holding that shape, the statue holding the square. Shapes can be acquired by killing the orange bar knights in your room. They'll drop one of the 2 shapes that are rotating on that back wall. You only want to pick up one shape at a time. If you pick up 2 shapes without depositing anything, it will combine into a 3-dimensional shape, and we're not ready for that part yet. You'll see here that I kill my knight, and I look for the square. I pick it up, and I drop it off at the middle statue, the one that's holding the square. Once phase 1 is complete, announce that you are done with phase 1. Do not move on to phase 2 until all 3 guardians finish phase 1 and announce that they are done. It's important to double check your wall and make sure that it is rotating between 2 of the same shape, and that shape is the same as the one on your statue. Initially, you can see that my circle is still. It's not rotating. This indicates that I only have a single shape available in my room, and that shape is a circle. This usually just means that one of the other inside players is still moving things around and hasn't given you your second shape. It's okay. Eventually, it'll start switching between 2 circles, so that means I'm good to go. Once you get confirmation that everyone has done phase 1, you can proceed to phase 2. PSA, an ogre is going to spawn after you've killed your 2 knights. Make sure you cook that ogre immediately. Phase 2, super simple. Once you kill your ogre, you'll get 2 new knights to spawn. You'll kill those knights again, and they're going to drop the shape that matches your wall. In this case, it's going to drop 2 circles. You're going to give a circle to the other 2 guardians. In this example, I'm giving a circle to the middle statue, and then I give my second circle to the left statue. This removes the circle from my room. I'm getting rid of the shape that I don't want. The other 2 guardians are going to be doing the same thing. I will receive 1 triangle from one guardian, and I will receive 1 square from the other guardian, since those are the shapes that their statue is holding and the shapes that they should have at the end of phase 1. Once all 3 guardians have announced that their phase 2 is complete, double check your wall. You should see it rotating between 2 shapes, neither of which are the shape your statue is holding. If this is true, you have done it correctly. Assuming everything went well and your wall has the 2 shapes that your statue is not holding, you may kill the 2 orange bar knights and pick up both of those shapes. This will combine them into a 3-dimensional shape. At this point, you're done, and you just need to wait until the outside guardians finish their job, which is to make the 3D shape that you are now holding so that you can cross through that crystal wall and rejoin their dimension. In order to exit through the crystal wall, the outside guardian needs to have finished their job, and the other inside guardians need to pick up both of their 2D shapes. If it's not letting you out of the wall, it means that either the outside guardian has not finished, or the other inside guardians haven't killed their knights and picked up their shapes. Just be patient, let everybody finish their jobs, and then you should be able to get through that wall. Sometimes RNG will bless you and your wall will already match your statue, indicating that phase 1 is complete without having to move anything around. If you're extra lucky, all 3 inside guardians will get this. Just make the call out that you're done phase 1 and wait for the other 2 guardians to do so before moving on to phase 2. It's time for the outside guardian portion. This part is the one that made my head spin when I first read a guide and watched a video. I think I'm going to be able to break it down for you in a way that gives you a formula to follow with little problem solving thrown in, but for this part, you're going to want one guardian dealing with the actual mechanic, which I will call the dissector. The other two guardians should be on add clear, making sure that the room is cleaned up and that you can move freely building your shapes. More than one person dissecting complicates things, makes it hard to track who has moved what and where, so just stick to one person doing the mechanic and two people on add clear. Similar to the inside rooms, there are 3 guardian statues holding shapes towards the back of the room furthest from the entrance. However, these statues are holding 3-dimensional shapes instead of a 2D shape. There are 6 different 3-dimensional shapes possible, which are all made up of 2 2-dimensional shapes. I'll be putting the diagram for this on the screen so that you can see what I'm referring to, but for my guide, I'm going to disregard the names of the 3-dimensional shapes. I think they overcomplicate things. I think it makes it a lot harder. We're just going to focus on 2D shapes. Before I start the actual mechanic of changing the shape, I want to clarify something that I had a hard time understanding from other guides. You are not physically moving shapes yourself. You're not adding new shapes. You're not taking away shapes. All of the shapes that you need are already present on the 3 statues. All you're doing is moving them around. You will mark a shape, you will mark another shape, and then those 2 shapes will swap places. So marking a shape on one statue and then marking a shape on another statue gets those shapes to swap places. The statues don't move. You never physically carry a shape from one statue to another statue. You mark 2 shapes and they trade places. Simply put, the entire mechanic consists of marking a shape on 2 different statues, causing those shapes to trade places. Alright, with the gist of the mechanic out of the way, let's move on to the somewhat technical explanation using an example from a run we did the other day. I'm going to do my best to make it as simple as possible. If your head starts to spin with all the shapes and directions, it's okay. Mine did too until I ran it a few times. I'm about to say a lot of shapes. It may help to pause or rewind so that you can really digest what's happening. So, remember the order of the shapes that the inside guardians needed to call out from left to right. This is where that call out comes into play. Let's focus on the left statue first and take a look at the call out that was made. In this case, the call out is triangle, square, circle. I enter this into the text chat just in case I forget. But the first shape in this sequence is triangle, and that's the shape that's relevant to the first statue, the one on the left. Similar to the inside guardians, we don't want that shape. This means I don't want a triangle on my left statue. The more that you see the 3D shapes, the easier it's going to be to identify what it's made of, but bases and outlines are going to be your friend, and I'm going to do my best to highlight them as they come up. Here I can see that the first statue, the one on the left, is made up of a triangle, the outline, and a circle, the base of the shape. Since triangle was the first shape in the callout, I don't want the triangle to be here. So I need to get rid of it by marking it for a swap. To do this, you're going to want to kill all 3 of the knights and find the shape that you intend to mark. In this case, I find and I pick up the triangle. I go to the first statue, the one on the left, and I hit dissect. This means that I have marked the triangle in that shape. I now need to mark another statue in order to get it to swap. Let's look at the first statue again. I've already marked the triangle. The other shape present is a circle. You never want 2 of the same shape at a statue. It's never going to be the correct combination. So I don't want to swap the triangle with another circle. That would just result in 2 circles here. That means that I have to mark a square. So I'm going to go find the square that a knight dropped and pick it up. I then go look at the middle and the right statue. One or both of them should have a square. In this example, I see that the middle statue has a square in it, so I hit dissect on that statue. I have now marked a second shape, in this case, a square. The triangle that I marked on the left statue and the square that I've marked on the middle statue will now swap places. I always go and check the first statue just in case and make sure that the swap that I just did worked. Just to recap, the first shape in the callout was triangle, so I double check that the first statue doesn't have that shape. As you see here, I only see a circle, which was originally there, and the square, which is what I just marked and swapped. Since I don't see a triangle here anymore, I know that I swapped shapes correctly and I'm done with the first statue. You never have to interact with it again, ignore it, it's good to go. Just like on the inside, when all of the knights are killed, ogres are going to spawn, only this time there are 2 of them, and they are unstops. Kill them both, and you'll get the next set of 3 knights to spawn, so that you can start working on your next shape. From here, move on to either the middle statue or the statue on the right. The process is exactly the same as the first statue. In this example, I accidentally picked up a shape before checking the middle and the right statue. This isn't a big deal. As you can see, I picked up a circle. Let's refer back to the original call out from the Inside Guardians. I can see that the third shape is a circle. This means that the third statue, the one on the right, can't have a circle in it. So I take the circle that I just picked up to the third statue and I dissect it, which will mark the circle to be swapped. Again, I haven't picked up the circle or removed it from the statue, I have only marked it to be moved. Since the first statue is done and is now off limits, I must have to swap with the second statue, the one in the middle. Again, we can't double up on shapes. Since the other shape in this 3D shape is a triangle, I shouldn't bring another triangle into this shape. That would result in 2 triangles. That must mean I need a square. So I go find a square buff from the knights, and I take it to the middle statue. After marking the square at the middle statue, the 2 shapes that I just marked will swap places. At this point, you should be done. We've already verified that the first statue was complete, and we haven't touched it since. Go ahead and double check the second statue and make sure that it doesn't have the shape from the callout. In this example, the second shape from the callout was square, and I can see that there are no squares in the middle statue. Once you verify that 2 out of the 3 statues are done, you are done dissecting. The third one should be done as long as the other 2 are finished. I have successfully moved my shapes around so that the shapes from the callout from left to right are not present at the statues from left to right. No triangle on the first statue, no square on the second statue, and no circle on the right statue. Just call out that the outside shapes are complete so that the inside guardians know that they can leave the crystal wall. On rare occasions, all 3 statues will have 2 of the same shape. This just means that you need to do a few more rounds of swapping. For example, if the first statue can't have a square, and you see that it has a cube, which is made up of 2 squares, you will need to swap a square off of that statue 2 times. The logic puzzle is still the same. You mark the shapes that you don't want first, and swap it to another statue by marking a shape that you do want. You'll know that you've done your job correctly when the inside guardians are able to pass through their crystal wall and join the rest of your team outside. This run was a specific example. It's not going to look the same on your run. Again, stick with that idea, marking the shapes that you don't want and moving them to another statue. As long as you stick with that process, it should all work out in the end. This next part happens randomly throughout the encounter and requires both the inside team and the outside team to work together. It's definitely the easiest part of the encounter, but it requires the most communication. Generally, it tends to happen between Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the Inside Guardians mechanic. The witness will calcify the 3 guardians that are on the inside, causing their ghosts to appear in the outside room. The outside guardians need to pick up a ghost and return it to its owner near the entrance of the encounter. We ordered the plates at the entrance in the encounter from 1 to 6, left to right. Quick note, we usually let the dissector keep dissecting since they're doing some mental gymnastics and they really can't be bothered by distractions. The ad clearers should be the ones matching ghosts to guardians. Of course, there's going to be a catch. The outside guardians can't see where the dead guardians are located. Only the inside guardians can see where the dead guardians are by spectating the guardians that are alive. Each inside player can only see 1 guardian. It'll never be their own, and it should have a gold spotlight on it. This is where distinct helmets and distinct ghosts come into play. Remember my blueberry helmet and my backpack ghost from earlier. Somebody would pick up my backpack ghost and wait for one of the other dead guardians to say blueberry helmet on plate 3. This tells the outside player that's holding my ghost to return it to me on plate 3, where my guardian should be standing. Again, the outside guardian won't actually see my guardian on plate 3, but the dead guardian that's spectating can see my guardian there. Once they deposit my ghost at that statue, I get revived and it allows me to keep working on my mechanic wherever I was at that point. In the footage you see here, I've been killed by the witness and I'm spectating my teammates. I can see that the fourth plate has a statue with a gold light shining. This is the guardian that I need to communicate to my teammates. This particular hunter has a cowboy hat, which is super easy to identify. I call out who's on plate 4, and the player that I'm spectating is able to find their ghost and deposit it at that statue. This really just involves communication. If you're dead, call out which guardian you can see and on which plate. If you're alive, grab a ghost and wait to be told which plate to deposit it at. Once everyone's revived, everybody goes back to their original job. This mechanic will also happen at the end of each cycle, which is when the 3 inside guardians make it through their crystal wall and reunite with the outside guardians. However, there's a slight twist. Everyone should group up near the entrance. A pair of unstoppables will spawn, as well as a batch of ads. Clean all those guys up, and then prepare to match ghosts and guardians again. This time, 5 of the 6 guardians will be calcified by the witness, leaving 1 guardian alive. Whoever is alive needs to grab a ghost and let the 5 who are dead guide them to the right spot. That will revive that person, who can then jump in and help matching ghosts with guardians. Be careful here. If the one player that's alive deposits a ghost at the wrong statue, it will kill them. Since they are the only player alive, you will wipe. Be extra certain you are depositing at the right place. I screwed our team once at the end of the 3rd cycle because I gave the wrong call out. Just make sure you're extra careful when communicating with your team. Double check that that is the right person on that plate. Once everyone's alive, the final shape looming wipe timer will reset, which indicates that a new cycle is beginning. You'll get 3 new inside guardians, 3 new outside guardians, and new shape combinations. You need to complete 3 cycles in order to beat the encounter. That brings us to the end of this guide. If you felt like this guide was helpful, consider leaving a like and sharing it with your fire team. If it wasn't helpful at all, my bad. I tried my best. This is one of, if not the most complicated encounters Bungie has ever made. It's okay if it doesn't click right away. Like all other challenging encounters in other raids, the most important thing you can do is to get in there and practice. Find a group that you're comfortable with, a group that's patient and understanding, and will let you make those mistakes as you practice. If you would like my take on other encounters or the entire raid, please let me know in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and good luck out there, Guardians.